I'd like to go through the process of how do I set up a floor plan. So I have a building with 6 rooms in it and these 6 processes. And so right now I'm going to call assembly as in room 1, painting in room 2, etc. Information that we talked about being collected when we were in class. Well, it was information about how much is moving from room to room. So hopefully this workflow matrix looks familiar because these are all the workflows going from room 1 to room 2. So from assembly to painting, from assembly to machining, from assembly to material storage. This, this matrix may look a little different because I put the distances which had just been up in this upper triangular portion. I have put them into lower triangular. I've just repeated them. And there's a reason why I did that. Is because when I start messing around with this last matrix, the flow, I want to make sure that I don't have extra work to do. So I did this, I finished filling in this distance matrix in a direct attempt to reduce the amount of work I've got to do later. But make sure you understand what it means. So this distance from room 1 to room 2 in this original layout is 10 feet. Well, from room 2 to room 1 is 10 feet. From room 1 to room 3 is 35 feet. Well, from room 3 to room 1 is 35 feet. So in order for me to fill this out, I just went through this thought process that says, okay, where does this number go? Well, that's from room 2 to room 6. So I need it to go from room 6 to room 2. So those two 15s are connected to each other. All right. Calculating costs, again, I have used that sum product function, which we've introduced in class as well. What I've introduced, or what I've done is, according to the math, choose a row, calculate the sum of the product between the cost per foot, in this case, the number of objects being moved, and the distance, which is over in this other matrix. Okay? So this is the cost, $5,300, of moving things from assembly to each of the other rooms. Okay. Similarly, $1,500 is the cost of moving from the room where the painting is done to some other room. Okay. Notice that this is a very linear setup, meaning once something leaves assembly and goes to painting, it never goes from painting back to assembly. So that's why I only have this upper triangular. And I say this because if I were in a hospital, I would need these lower triangular things filled in too, because, if I have 60 people going from the ER to X-ray, hopefully I have 60 people maybe coming back to the ER from X-ray. So, but this time everything is one directional. All right. Well, what I would like to do is change the floor plan. The objective is try to find something that will make this cost go down. Well, don't do anything too fancy until you figure out, okay, well, how would I do this in general? So here's what I want to do. I want to take and I want to move some things. Let's move assembly. Let's move assembly to room 2, and let's move painting to room 1. Okay, so now painting's in room 1, assembly's in room 2, and I have to I've got to figure out a way to get the information from here transferred in the right order down to here. So here's the thought. I'm looking at these 2's here, and I'm using those with the 2's here. I'm saying, okay, from painting to painting, all right, that would be this cell. The number there, which is just the number 0, needs to be placed right here. Okay. All right, well, let's look here. From assembly to painting. Okay, assembly to painting. Well, there are 60 objects. So somehow I need to get the number 60 here. Either I hard code it like I just did, or I find out a methodology for getting that 60 here. Well, let me think for just a second. How do I get any of these numbers put down here? Maybe that will help me come up with a way to tell Excel to do the work for me, for example. So let's think. This 100 is movement between room 1, assembly, and machining. Okay, well, assembly and machining. Okay, that's where that 100 goes. Oops. Okay, well, what about this 30? Well, that's from assembly to inspection. So assembly to inspection should be a 30. Okay, well, let me tell you, first off, because I didn't change 3 through 6, rows 3 through 6 down here are going to be identical to rows 3 through 6 up here. So I could just mark it off like that. The issues are up here. Okay, so assembly to assembly, well, there's nothing traveling from assembly to assembly. I knew that from up here. Okay, so those two places should have the same number. All right, well, what about assembly to material storage? Okay, well, up here that would be assembly to material storage. That would be 0. Assembly to shipping. Okay, well, assembly, shipping, that's 0. What about assembly to inspection? Well, that's 30. We already put that 30 in there. So if you look at it, I mean, what I did is I took this up here and it almost translated down here. You know, it's almost the same, just a little bit of difference. Okay. Well, what about up here? Painting to assembly. Well, painting to assembly was 0. Painting to machinery. Painting to machine center. That should be a 40. Okay, hopefully, I'm hoping that you see and understand how these numbers are getting placed up here. What I want to show you is that Excel has a way to do this work for you. Okay, it's a function that I learned just for this class. I'd never heard of it before, but found it very, very convenient. So here we go. It starts out with an equal, and what I want to do is I want to index. Well, what does that mean? Well, indexing has something to do with these numbers up here. Okay, so when it says index, when I want an array, I want the entire array. So see, I started up here so that I had to have that empty cell in that corner, but I have these objects here that I'm going to be using to do my indexing, the column numbers and the column numbers and the row numbers. Okay, I'm going to copy this, so I don't want that array to ever change. Okay, well, the next thing says row number. Okay, well, what do I want to do? Well, I want to match the value 2, so the process 2. Oh, and by the way, I don't want to ever leave column C, so I'm going to make it this type of a lookup. What am I looking up? Well, I'm looking into the column up in this original array, and it will look for the number 2. So this match says, look for the number 2 in this first column in the original array. And I don't want that to change. That original array needs to stay constant. And I wanted an exact match. Okay, so what this function is doing is matching this 2 to this 2 up here. Okay. Well, now I want to match very similarly this 2. And I am not going to be leaving row 19 as I copy. So I'm going to make sure I don't leave row 19. And I want it to look for that 2 up here. Not going to let that change. And I want an exact match. So here's really what I'm saying. This function says, go up into this big table, match the number 2 that's underneath this function to this number 2, match the number 2 in this column to this number 2, and put the number 0 there. So where did this 0 come from? the 0 that is right here, maybe I should mark that instead of saying right here. I should unmark this for right this moment. The 0 that's sitting right here came from that cell right there, right? Because that was what was in column, or excuse me, row 2 and column 2, row 2, column 2, the number that was in the intersection of row 2, column 2. All right, now, if I've set this up right, copying this should put the number 60 right there. Okay, let me unhighlight this. So what did it do? Well, it was looking for the row 1 up here. Row 1 is here. Column 2, and the number in the intersection of row 1, column 2, which is 60. And it placed that 60 here. Well, I should now be able to copy this all the way down. And then I should be able to fill in the rest of the matrix this way. All right, well, this allows me to see what the cost is for my new configuration, my new floor plan being like this. Now, one legitimate question would be, can I reduce these costs even further? That would take some playing around, but at least I now have a way of making comparisons. So if I want to make another comparison, all I do is rearrange the rooms where the different processes are, and I see that I didn't get anything by just reversing the order. So, but I could test anything I want. Now all I got to do is see what I didn't put in yet. Okay, there I actually made it go up. So the next step, what we might do is try to find some sort of methodical way to try to get this down below the original cost. And we can do that in class. Thanks.